Welcome to this Bible history series titled, When We Suffer. Part 1, Suffering That Is Out of Our Control. We've all faced pain we didn't ask for: illness, death, betrayal, disaster. This kind of suffering hits when we least expect it and tests our faith in ways we never imagined. But the Bible is not silent about suffering. Today, we'll look at stories like Job, Joseph, and David to understand how God is present even when life falls apart. Suffering. It is one of the hardest things in life and one of the most universal. Every person, no matter their background, will face it in some form. But not all suffering is the same. Some suffering is the result of our own decisions, such as sin or poor choices. Other suffering is persecution for following Christ. But the type of suffering we're focusing on in this Bible history is different. It's the kind of suffering that comes upon us without warning and without our control. A cancer diagnosis, a car accident, the loss of a child, the betrayal of a spouse. This kind of suffering can shake our foundation to the core. And yet, the Bible does not avoid this topic. From beginning to end, Scripture is filled with stories of people who faced deep suffering. The Bible does not sugarcoat pain. Instead, it shows us that suffering can either draw us closer to God, or it can push us away in anger and bitterness. Let's begin with one of the most famous examples of uncontrollable suffering: Job. Job was a righteous man. In Job 1:1, the Bible describes him as blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. He was not suffering because of sin. In fact, God himself spoke of Job's righteousness. But Job lost nearly everything. In a short time, his children were killed, his wealth was destroyed, and his health was broken. His body was covered in sores, and he sat in ashes, scraping himself with pottery. His friends told him he must have sinned. His wife told him to curse God and die. But Job held on to his faith, even in the darkness. In Job 13:15, he said, "Though he slay me, I will hope in him." Job didn't have the answers. He didn't understand why it was happening. But he trusted God anyway. Later in Job 42:5, he says, "I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you." Through suffering, Job didn't just learn about God, he encountered him in a deeper way. Then there's Joseph, another man who faced suffering not because of sin, but because of the sinful actions of others. In Genesis 37, Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, and thrown into prison. For years, he waited, forgotten and alone. And yet, Genesis 39 repeats the phrase, "The Lord was with Joseph." God didn't stop the betrayal. He didn't prevent the false accusation, but he never abandoned Joseph. And in time, Joseph rose to power and was used to save many lives during a famine. When he finally confronted his brothers in Genesis 50:20, he said, "As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." That is the mystery of suffering. What others mean for harm, God can use for our good. But suffering isn't always the result of betrayal or calamity. Sometimes it comes in the form of deep emotional grief. In 1 Samuel 1, Hannah is described as being deeply distressed and weeping bitterly. She was unable to have children, and her heart was broken. In her pain, she poured out her soul to the Lord. 1 Samuel 1:10 says, "She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly." The Psalms are full of this kind of honest suffering. David, a man after God's own heart, cried out to the Lord in anguish. In Psalms 6:6-7, he writes, "I am weary with my moaning. Every night I flood my bed with tears. I drench my couch with my weeping. My eye wastes away because of grief." These are not the words of someone with shallow faith. These are the cries of a man who knew he could take his pain to God. Psalm 34:18 tells us, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit." God is not far off when we suffer. He is near. He is not ashamed of our tears. He does not rebuke us for crying out. In fact, He invites us to bring our pain to Him. Isaiah 43. 2 is a powerful reminder of God's presence in suffering. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. God does not promise to keep us from suffering, but He promises to go through it with us. Another example is Naomi in the book of Ruth. She lost her husband and both of her sons. When she returned to her homeland, she told people to call her Mara, which means bitter, because the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. Ruth 1:20. Naomi was honest about her grief, but through that suffering, God was working. Ruth, her daughter-in-law, stayed by her side, and eventually, Ruth would marry Boaz, and they would become ancestors to King David, and ultimately, to Jesus Christ. Even the people of Israel experienced great suffering. In Exodus, they cried out under the weight of their slavery in Egypt. In the wilderness, they faced hunger, thirst, and danger. Some turned to God. Others grumbled and rebelled. Suffering has always tested the hearts of God's people. What makes the difference? The direction of our response. Suffering by itself does not automatically bring us closer to God. But if we turn to Him in the midst of our pain, it can become the very thing that deepens our faith. In Psalm 119, verse 71, the psalmist writes, "It is good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn your statutes." Affliction taught him something he couldn't have learned any other way. In the furnace of pain, faith is purified. Romans 8:28 is a verse many know, but few fully grasp during hardship. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose. That doesn't mean everything is good. It means that God can work through anything, even suffering, to bring about good. But to see that good, we must cling to God. We must bring our brokenness to Him. He does not despise it. In fact, He specializes in healing the brokenhearted. In Psalm 147, verse 3, it says, "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." This type of suffering, the kind we didn't cause, the kind that blindsides us, can either leave us bitter or make us better. And the difference is what we do with it. Do we turn inward and grow cold? Or do we turn to God and allow Him to carry us through? As we've seen in Job, Joseph, Hannah, David, and others, God does not always remove the pain, but He always walks through it with us. He is a God who sees, who hears, and who cares. We've seen how suffering, though outside our control, can become the very moment we encounter God more deeply. The question is, how will we respond? In part 2, we'll take a closer look at why God allows suffering in the first place, and how the Bible answers that hard question. If you enjoyed learning about the Bible, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment about what story you want to see next.